Almighty Raiders game author, Gongzi Rulan copywriting, Zhang Li accidentally bound the Almighty strategy game system. After starting the strategy, he found that the male protagonist was fancy angry every day. Zhang Li, it seems to be attacking a pufferfish. Male lead. Remark, the attackers are all the same person, also known as the male protagonist is always angry. Overhead world, great sweet writing, love-oriented, slow wear. Strategy Directory Sundaram Menseo CEO Attack Zhang Zhan, I pay, you are outstanding. Zhang Zhan, I pay, but I post. The school bully and the loyal dog brain make up for the attack Qi Fang, don't fall in love with me, I am the most annoying of homosexuality. Qi Fang, so why are you ignoring me? Interstellar ABO Little Wolf Dog Attack Lu Hung, the instructor is such a cruel omega, who will marry or die? Lu Hung, if I don't go to hell, whoever goes to hell, kill me. Duplicity is not a prince attack Xiao Qiheng, even if the solitary is now a waste, it can still make you worse off than death. Xiao Qiheng, do you dare to hurt him of Ellis hair, loneliness makes your whole family better than dead. Offensive veteran Cotters Lu Jinghe, anchor? What an unsound career. Lu Jinghe, I bought the live broadcast platform. The indifferent little monk attack Xianqing, donor, please respect yourself. Xianqing, donor, I'm still vulgar. Content tag, fast track interstellar sweet text in entertainment search keywords, protagonist, Zhang Li supporting role, fine score attack Zhang always gets angry every day. Zhang Li debuted at the age of 16 and was awarded the title of Double Emperor of Film and Television at the age of 20. In the following 10 years, he won countless awards. On his 30th birthday, Zhang Li announced his withdrawal from the entertainment industry and planned to go back to his hometown to open a small shop to live his life. Unexpectedly, he died in a car accident on the way back after the press conference. Regarding the sudden misfortune, Zhang Li did not have much regret. His life is short. Although he has suffered the most downright suffering, he has also tasted the most extravagant luxury. He is also alone, and this catastrophe is only destined. However, what caught him off guard was that he did not dissipate or reincarnate after his death, but was forced to bind a game system called Almighty Raiders for unknown reasons. As an actor, Zhang Li's plays naturally involved science fiction related to the future world, and he also read 1 or 2 online novels with the theme of quick pass and passing through, but that's all. He never thought that this kind of thing would really exist, and it would happen to himself. After being bound to the strategy game, a service system appeared in Zhang Li's mind, and the opponent transferred the rules of the game to his mind. The so-called Almighty Raiders is a game that claims to come from the future. The selected players will be transferred to various virtual worlds through the system link, and then they will go to attack various types of game heroes. Players will be rewarded for completing tasks in the virtual world, and will be punished for failing tasks. Points will be accumulated every time they pass the level. When the points reach a certain level, they can be exchanged for strategy items. The setting of each world is different. It may be a parallel real world, may be an overhead ancient world, or a sci-fi interstellar world. All worlds are randomly transmitted by the system, and players do not have the right to cancel or replace them. In short, after the system is bound, players can only be forced to participate and abide by the rules of the game. As for the reason for being bound, in the words of the system, the authority is too low to be inquired. Zhang Li. This kind of compulsory participation game is really uncomfortable. Hello host, may I open the first Raiders world? The system asked. Can I not participate in the election? Zhang Li asked. No. The system replied. Then you ask me what's the point? Zhang Li snorted, go on. Anyway, everyone is dead, just play it. When Zhang Li woke up again, he was on a big snow-white bed. The surface of the bed was a bit messy, but the soft texture made people feel very comfortable. The dazzling high beams seemed to be pressing on the retina. Zhang Li blinked uncomfortably and found that it was just an illusion. There was no truck in front of him, no assistants and agents screaming, only a white ceiling. Zhang Li understood that he had reached the first world, the system said. He kept lying on his back, calling his teammates in his heart, "Are you there in the system? I am here." A mechanically indifferent voice sounded clearly in Zhang Li's mind, and the system asked, "I noticed that your host's consciousness has been awake, do you receive the memory of the original owner?" Zhang Li squeezed his astringent eyes and said, "Receive." Soon, the memories and personal images belonging to the original body were quickly transmitted to Zhang Li's brain through the system. When he saw the appearance of the original body, Zhang Li was a little surprised. The opponent looked a little similar to him, but was younger and softer in appearance. The original name is Zhang Li, just like him. He is 21 years old. He has just graduated from university. He has a single-parent family. He is introverted and even weak. There is a favorite person named Zhang Xiang, which is why the original body appeared here. Zhang Xiang is 2 years older than the original, and the two grew up together as childhood sweethearts. In high school, the original body was often bullied by people at the same level due to his beautiful personality and introverted and timid personality. Zhang Xiang helped him 1 or 2 times, and he fell in love with Zhang Xiang. Behind Zhang Xiang, she waited like an old mother. Zhang Xiang entered the performing arts circle when he was in college, and he was still a good-looking person, but he had no acting skills and backstage. After several years, he had been mingling outside the 38th line, and he was not well known. Zhang Xiang also knows that the original body likes him, but he has not pointed out it. First, the original body is introverted and resolute. He is afraid that he will be slapped after he starts. It will not be good for his future development in the entertainment industry, not to mention using the original body as a nanny. Anyway, someone will wash and cook for him without spending money. This situation continued until last month when Zhang Xiang went to audition for a major production TV series, which was invested by the Zhang Group and led by the gold director Zhou Jin in the circle. In addition to the protagonist has already been set, many major supporting roles have been audited. Way to choose. Zhang Xiang would naturally not let this good opportunity pass, but his own ability is limited, and it doesn't matter if he fails the audition. But he was not reconciled. He heard some news and learned that a certain associate director of the crew liked a handsome boy, so he hit the original body. Although the original body is 21 years old, it is not a teenager, but it is not an exaggeration to say that it is really beautiful and impeccably beautiful. Zhang Xiang's idea is to let the original body accompany the deputy director for one night in exchange for a major role in the play. Originally refused to accept his request, and was very disappointed with his behavior. He felt that his love was like a joke, so he avoided Zhang Xiang for several days. Zhang Xiang was unwilling to lose such an opportunity, and made up his mind to start from the original body. He went to the original body to communicate with him, saying all the good things and coaxing the original body. As long as he got the role, he would stay with him and save enough money. They quit the entertainment circle, and the two returned to their hometown to live together, filial piety to both parents, and grow old together. The future described by Zhang Xiang is too beautiful. Every point is something that the original body had expected but did not dare to dream of. In the face of love, he finally gradually compromised and agreed to Zhang Xiang's suggestion. After that, Zhang Xiang quickly asked someone to pull the line for the assistant director and passed the original photo to the other party to see. As he thought, after seeing the photos, the assistant director quickly agreed to the deal. And agreed on the time and location of the hotel. Before coming to the hotel, Yuan himself drank some wine for courage. He felt as heavy as the execution ground, and imagined several Mediterranean and beer belly assistant directors in his mind. But what surprised him was that the other party was unexpectedly young. His appearance in his early 30s was not as wretched as he had imagined. It's just that no matter what the other person looks like, he likes Zhang Ziang for many years, and he will definitely have a psychological barrier to a man who suddenly wants to dedicate his life to another man, so the other person starts to resist when he meets him, and even cries with his nose and tears. The other party thinks that he is crying, and he is not a person who is difficult for a strong man. He goes to the bathroom to take a bath and let the original body go by himself. The original body was relieved, and when he was about to leave, he suddenly received a call from Zhang Ziang. When he saw the caller ID, Yuan was happy in his body and mind. He thought Zhang Ziang regretted and called to tell him to leave, but he didn't want to hear ambiguous gasps and groans from the other end without speaking. Although the original body is still a virgin, he also knows what this voice represents, and it is even clearer that one of the voices is the familiar Zhang Ziang. In addition to gasping, there were intermittent conversations coming from the phone. The original body heard them mention their names, said they were stupid, and kicked themselves when they got the character. Hearing the conversation between the two, the original face turned pale, feeling like a fool, like being played around by the other party, so angry that his fingers were trembling, and he didn't draw a breath, his eyes turned black and he fell down. Then came the actor Zhang Li. After receiving the memory of the original body, Zhang Li felt a little speechless, so the original body was alive and angry? After being tricked, instead of killing Zhang Ziang, he angered himself first. Yes. After receiving Zhang Li's speechlessness, the system responded. Zhang Li, I was speechless. It took only 1 minute from the death of the original body to the arrival of Zhang Li. The phone call was still going on. It was probably Zhang Ziang who accidentally pressed the phone and dialed it, but no one noticed it. Zhang Li stretched out his hand and took the mobile phone that was lying beside him. He pressed it to his ear and listened. He frowned because of the lustful rumblings and pressed the record button. After recording for 2 minutes, he hung up the call. Put the phone aside. System, are you still there? Sensing the silence in his mind, Zhang Li asked again. I'm here, what is the host's order? The system asked. What is my mission in this world? Zhang Li asked as he sat up from the bed. Hold on. After the system inquired, the task of this world was sent to Zhang Li, and a small virtual section appeared in front of Zhang Li's eyes with a line of words displayed on it. Column on the tablet in front of him was lit. Is this the male lead? Zhang Li reacted quickly and looked to the bathroom, just in time to see the person in the bathroom walking out while wiping his hair with a towel. He was a very tall and handsome man, about 1.9 meters tall. His upper body was bare, showing a strong upper body and smooth abdominal muscles. 2 obvious mermaid lines between his hips were submerged in the towel around his waist. He had just showered. The male body exudes an invisible and strong hormonal breath. Zhang Li has seen many good skins in the entertainment industry for more than 10 years in his previous life, but the people in front of him still make him feel bright. The other party has a combination of an indifferent tension, which Zhang Li appreciates very much. Type. That's right, Zhang Li likes men. This makes him not too resistant to the task of guiding the male lead, at least not to the female lead, otherwise he will definitely feel a little conscientious. What Zhang Li didn't expect was that the so-called male protagonist was actually the target of the original transaction, and the appearance and figure of the other party were the type that Zhang Li liked, which made him feel like it would be effortless. Are you in love? Zhang Li raised the corner of his lips slightly and suddenly became very interested in this game. In his previous life, he was so busy that he was still a lonely family. He had nowhere to use his love skills acquired through filming. Now that he has changed the world and his goal is the type he likes, the first step is to understand the body. Zhang Zhan didn't know anything about Zhang Li's thoughts at this time. He came out of the shower and found Zhang Li was still sitting on the bed. He paused and frowned, why haven't you left? He thought that he had left after taking a shower, but he didn't expect that he was not only still in bed, but he changed his defensive and resisting appearance just now, and his eyes were staring at him. For Zhang Li, it was impossible to walk, and it was impossible to walk without sleeping before someone else. Zhang Li did not immediately answer his words, but slowly got off the bed. His white toes stepped on the dark carpet to form a strong visual contrast. He crossed his hands and grabbed the hem of the t-shirt. The big shirt was taken off and dropped on the ground casually. Seeing his behavior, Zhang Zhan raised his eyebrows slightly, standing still, but his face was mocking. Zhang Li didn't care, he looked at him with a good look, and put his fingers on the belt buckle on his waist, gently picked it, and then slowly pulled out the belt, his hand loosened with his clothes. Throw it aside together. His movements are slow with a hint of carelessness, obviously random, but there is a kind of seduce. As the belt pulls away, some loose trouser waists slide slightly, just stuck on his hip bones, revealing slenderness. With the flexible waist and white panties, the originally shy and introverted temperament of the whole person suddenly became public and lusty. Zhang Zhan's eyes darkened, and his gaze fell on Zhang Li's face again from the waist. When he wanted to see what tricks he played, he saw Zhang Li slowly approaching him. Zhang Li is about 1.78 meters tall, and he needs to look up slightly to look at Zhang Zhan. At this time, after he faded away from the original body's cowardly mood, his eyebrows were completely indistinguishable. The transaction hasn't been completed yet, how can I leave? Zhang Li chuckled lightly, put his hand on Zhang Zhan's shoulder, and approached his ear a little bit. Zhang Zhan felt a warm breath fluttering at the base of his ears, itchy and numb, and the people in front of him sounded in his ears with traces of playfulness and seduction. Or, you can't do it after taking a shower. The author has something to say. The first strategy: President attack. Zhang Zhan, I pay, you are outstanding, and you know who you are. Zhang Zhan, I will pay, I will post, ask for a public identity. The male protagonist is not the assistant director he originally thought. Thanks to the little angels who received in advance and follow up the articles. The new little angels insist on reading the first few chapters, and you will reap a new source of happiness. Combined with the author's words, small theaters are better for eating. Thank you everyone. Zhang Zhan didn't feel strange about Zhang Li's sudden change, only that he had changed the way he seduced him. He had seen this method a lot. What really made him care about was the word no in Zhang Li's mouth. Men are most taboo when others say that they can't do it, especially those who were crying under him just now. Zhang Zhan's face sank, he stretched out his hand to wrap up Zhang Li's waist, and slammed the person around him directly in his arms. The two leaned together, Zhang Zhan pressed Zhang Li's waist with one hand, and asked in a dangerous tone, "Who can't you say?" Zhang Li could feel the cold water vapor and the frequency of the heartbeat that the other party had just taken after the shower. The cold body was inexplicably comfortable, which made him a little happy. Not only did he shrink from the other party's sudden pressure, but on the contrary. Meet the opponent's eyes and look at them. Who? Zhang Li tilted his head and showed a smile that seemed innocent but with a hint of provocation. Try it and you'll know. For this reason, if he is still indifferent, Zhang Zhan is not a man, at least not a man with normal physiology. He pressed the back of Zhang Li's head with his hand, opened his 5 fingers and inserted them into the hair to close together, and with a slight force, he forced Zhang Li's head to lean back slightly. When Zhang Li Shipane opened his mouth, he lowered his head and blocked it with his mouth. Holding Zhang Li's lips, his strength was both domineering and fierce. Fuck me, so fierce? Zhang Qi cursed, but he did not resist, but reached out his hand and hooked Zhang Zhan's neck, responding with the same force. After you come and I have a chat, Zhang Zhan loosened the palm of Zhang Li's head, and pushed the person to one side against the wall, lowered his head and continued to kiss, while one hand untied Zhang Li's loose trousers hanging around his waist. As soon as his finger touched the zipper, Zhang Li stopped him. Wait. Let's make it clear first. Zhang Zhan was very excited, and was a little impatient with his restraint. He thought he wanted to make trouble like just now, his tone was unhappy. What do you want? The money will not lose you. Money. Zhang Li raised his eyebrows. I don't want money. No money. Zhang Zhan was a little surprised at what he said, and sneered, why are you here for money? Aren't you here to make a deal? I'm a trader, but it's not money. Zhang Li didn't care about his ridicule, and said the words of trade without burden. I want the role of Lu Chuandeng in Lui Luyu, but it must be for me, not Zhang Xiang. The Long River and Fallen Moon is the TV series for which Zhang Xiang was rejected from the audition. It is adapted from a very popular novel of the same name. Because of Zhang Xiang, the original body had also been to read the novel, and Zhang Li was still somewhat impressed with the plot and the characters. Since he wants to fulfill the original body's wish and slap Zhang Xiang in order to calm the original body's unwillingness and anger, Zhang Li's first step is naturally to start with the drama Long River and Falling Moon. Zhang Xiang wanted the role in this play, so he took the role, and Zhang Xiang wanted to be famous in the entertainment circle, so he took the road to the gods in the entertainment circle again. He will get everything Zhang Xiang wants, and Zhang Xiang's expression must be wonderful. As an acting school who has been honed in the show business for more than 10 years, Zhang Li lacks acting skills the most. The only thing he lacks is opportunity, and the person in front of him is his first opportunity. Zhang Zhan didn't expect that Zhang Li didn't want money, and instead asked him for a role in a TV series. In his capacity, deciding on a role on the crew is just a matter of effort. What makes him a little unhappy is that a gadget like Zhang Li dares to negotiate with him, but he stares at him with staring eyes. The momentum of speak up first before going to bed was unexpectedly cute, and a little bit of offense was dissipated in his heart. Row. Overnight, Zhang Li was tossed over and over again 3 times, and for the 3rd time, he almost fainted by Zhang Zhan. Zhang Zhan personally proved that he was not bad, but very good. Before Zhang Li went to bed, he even felt that his request for a supporting role was lowered, and he should have a protagonist. The next day, Zhang Zhan woke up, and when he turned his head, he saw Zhang Li sleeping beside him. Zhang Li was still asleep, lying on his side with his back facing him, with black hair scattered on the white pillows, white sheets covering the waist below his waist, and the entire white bare back at a glance. There are a lot of red marks and faint bruise on Zhang Li's back, which shows how intense the two of them did last night. After Zhang Zhan's gaze touched the beautiful scenery in front of him, his gaze couldn't help but he felt a little eager in his heart, but after all, he was not a lustful person, and he quickly suppressed that thought. Thinking of the person in front of him last night who took the initiative to seduce him, but after he got into bed, he became unfamiliar with his skills, and finally made the corners of his eyes red and almost crying, Zhang Zhan was thoughtful. Sure enough, this is the first time. Shen Yuji said last night that he wanted to find a chick for himself, but he didn't seem to be lying. Seeing that he was quite happy last night, he decided to forgive Shen Yuji for his self-assertion arrangement. After lying on the bed for a while, Zhang Zhan sat up, reached out and took the mobile phone on the side to see what time it was. He found that there were several missed calls from Shen Yuji and a few missed messages, so he clicked on the messages. After seeing it, his brows frowned, and his eyes moved to Zhang Li's body. It happened that Zhang Li moved his body at this time and woke up. The unfamiliar environment made Zhang Li, who had just woke up, a little dazed. It took 2 seconds before he remembered what he had experienced last night. At this moment, he was still a little uncomfortable between his waist and legs. Zhang Qilai cursed an animal, and when he turned over, he saw the so-called animal sitting next to him. At this time, he was looking at himself with a scrutiny look. The two looked at each other for a few seconds, and the atmosphere was a little strange. Zhang Li moved his sour waist and said hello, morning. Before he finished speaking, Zhang Zhan interrupted him, who are you? Zhang Zhan's voice was a bit cold, with a vague anger. Zhang Li was a little inexplicable when he asked him to come and ask who he was, but he answered honestly, I am Zhang Li. Zhang Li. Zhang Zhan glanced at the phone and made sure that Shen Yuji didn't say this name last night, and Shen Yuji said in the message that the person he was looking for did not come last night, so who is Zhang Li? Zhang Zhan suddenly felt a sense of being calculated, his face sank, he leaned over, pinched Zhang Li's neck with one hand, and forced him to ask, "Who are you? Who asked you to come over?" Zhang Li was suddenly stuck in his neck, subconsciously trying to fight back. He pressed his other hand on the top of his head when he moved his hand. As soon as Zhang Li walked through, the original body's physique wasn't very good at all. Last night, he was tossed by Zhang Zhan several times, and he was simply imprisoned for a time. This kind of defiant posture made Zhang Xili scold Junyang, but his face showed an uncomfortable expression. His wide-open eyes were full of fear and anxiety, and he said with difficulty, "You, pinch me. So sad." Zhang Li just woke up, the corners of his eyes were still reddish physiologically. Zhang Zhan met the wetness and fear in his eyes, and remembered the squeaky look of him humming and crying under him last night. The force on his hands was slightly loosened. "Come," but the tone is still cold, "say, who asked you to come?" Knowing that his weakness was effective, Zhang Li coughed slightly, his voice was hoarse, "You let me come. You made a deal with Zhang Xiang and let me come." Zhang Xiang? Zhang Zhan had no impression of this name. Last night, he had a party with one of Shen Yu's pedestrians. Soon after returning to the hotel, Shen Yuji called and said that he had found someone to give him his 32-year-old virgin, Phoenix Coast. Here is a newcomer who hasn't been budded, and is guaranteed to be beautiful and clean. He didn't have any interest in this at first, only that Shen Yuji had nothing to look for. However, when the person came and found that his appearance was really pleasing to him, he kept the person and had the experience of last night, but did not want to get up early in the morning and receive a message from Shen Yuji that the person he looked for last night did not escape temporarily. "Come over." "So who is this person who slept with him? Who is Zhang Xiang?" Zhang Zhan asked. "Zhang Xiang is..." Zhang Li stopped, noticed Zhang Zhan's expression, and found that something was wrong, and asked quickly, "Aren't you the deputy director Zhang of the crew of Long River Luyu? Who told you that I was the deputy director?" Zhang Zhan asked back. "Aren't you?" Zhang Li confirmed again. "No." Zhang Zhan's face turned black. "What the is the deputy director? Lao Tzu is an investor." Zhang Li recalled the memory of his original body. It was the hotel location that Zhang Xiang and the associate director of the crew had arranged. When he answered the phone, Zhang Xiang wrote the room number on the memo pad. The memo was given to the original body and hurried away. The original body only knows that the deputy director's surname is Zhang, but he has not actually seen him. Zhang Li was in this room when he woke up. It happened that the male protagonist was also surnamed Zhang, so he subconsciously thought that the male protagonist was the director Zhang Xiang said, but unexpectedly made a mistake. But last night when he said that he wanted a role in the play, the other party should be so happy. If it weren't for a few messy responses, it would have something to do with the crew. Thinking of this, Zhang Li decided to clarify the matter first, so he said, "Since you are not the director of the crew, when I said I wanted a role last night, why did you agree?" "Why should I agree?" Zhang Zhan sneered when he heard the accusation in his words. "I asked the crew to do so why do you say me? Did you ask?" Zhang Li was a little surprised, and reacted to what he meant, "Are you an investor?" This news was a bit breaking news, and Zhang Li hadn't expected it at all. Zhang Xiang originally only wanted to shoot the lower leg of the co-director of the crew. Didn't expect to be hit by the original body to directly shoot the thigh of the investor? "Don't you know who I am to take the role? Pretend to do." Zhang Zhan's words stopped suddenly, thinking that Zhang Li thought he was the associate director of the crew, and it instantly realized that Zhang Li didn't come to him last night, but to find the subdirector's unspoken rules for a role. As an investor in Long River and Falling Moon, Zhang Zhan naturally had dinner with the production team of the crew, and he was indeed impressed by a director surnamed Zhang, but the other party has been nearly 50 years old and has grown fat. Ear is still a Mediterranean. Although unspoken rules are the norm in the entertainment industry, when he thinks that Zhang Li wants to climb the bed of such a person for a role, Zhang Zhan can't help but contempt, and even some of his physical affection for him last night has faded a lot. It's just a thing that crawls around in order to be famous. Zhang Zhan hummed softly, suppressing the inexplicable upset in his heart. The author has something to say, after a long time. Zhang Zhan, it is good to climb the bed. Zhang Li, can you be a little professional? Zhang Li didn't mind what Zhang Zhan was thinking at the moment. He remembered that his system had disappeared since Zhang Zhan appeared last night. It was a bit strange, so he called twice in his heart. At first there was no response from the system, and he asked again before getting an answer. I'm here. The system's voice was apologetic. Sorry, host, there was a problem with the internal test system last night. I just handled it. I've been waiting for a long time. Closed beta system. Zhang Li heard it, with a bad premonition in his heart. Your game won't be. Yes, this is the first time the game is started. You are the first batch of players. Dare you play the closed beta version? Zhang Li was a little speechless. He felt like a guinea pig. He asked happily, then do I still have a newbie gift package to give away? Yes. The system replied, calling out the game task section for Zhang Li to see. Zhang Li didn't expect that he would just talk about it casually, but it really did. There is a reward option in the upper right corner of the virtual tablet, and a small yellow light is on at this time, reminding him that there is a novice reward. Zhang Zhan was on the side. Zhang Li couldn't reach out and asked the system, what is it? Please look at the host. The system clicked on the reward and motioned to Zhang Li to check it out. After seeing the refreshing hand reward, Zhang Li only felt that his eyes were dark. Novice reward item name, Ice and Snow Skin like Jade Pill X1. Item function, after the host uses it, the skin will look new, smooth and white like a fresh egg, crystal clear like the best jade, and your skin is like snow and jade. You deserve it. Is the creator of your game a woman? Zhang Li asked after being silent for 2 seconds. This advertisement was played louder than the skincare advertisements he had seen in the previous life. It's not. Then is he a pervert? The system is silent. I don't know if it's the default or it can't answer. Zhang Li thinks it should be the former, otherwise how could he develop such a boring game? At this moment, Zhang Li completely forgot about himself, who he still felt interested in the game last night. But he doesn't pursue this now, and instead asks the system if there is any information about Zhang Zhan. He needs to know the basic situation of the other party to be a symptomatic strategy. The system switched the information to the page of Zhang Zhan. Zhang Li found that the information was different from the detailed information in the previous original Zhang Li. Zhang Zhan's information was only a single line of words. Jiang's Group is a leading media company in China. Its operations include movies, TV series, variety shows, singer records, etc. Zhang Li's impression of the Jiang Group comes from Zhang Xiang. Zhang Xiang has always wanted to sign the Jiang Group because it not only has good resources and high income, but also has a top brand agent, but he has never reached the signing standards. The Long River and Fallen Moon was invested and filmed by Jiang's Group. From the investment to the crew, it is generous. The male lead is the popular entertainment actor Jin Yu, and the female lead is the powerful Xiahua Feng Yading. Both of them are under the Jiang's Group. The show was voted by netizens as one of the most anticipated TV shows this year. It turns out that Zhang Zhan is the president of the Jiang Group. No wonder he said that he hired the crew. Zhang Li wrote down the information for the next use. Compared with this information, he is more concerned about the column of goodwill degree next to him. He remembers that the goodwill degree was clearly 0 last night, but at this time it showed 10. In other words, Zhang Zhan him 3 times, but his favorability dropped from 0 to 10. Regarding this result, Zhang Chen was a little unbalanced. Damn, he still didn't dislike Zhang Zhan's poor skills and only knew how to drive bumper cars. He even dared to lower his favorability, it was shameless. Thinking of this, he looked at Zhang Zhan, who walked over to the balcony to call, unavoidably with a deep dissatisfaction. Zhang Zhan stood on the balcony and called the secretary to pick him up. After hanging up the phone and returning to the room, he saw Zhang Li sitting on the bed and looking at him like last night, but compared to the eagerness of last night, there are more eyes today. Disgusted? Dislike? Is he disgusting that he is not the so-called assistant director? Still dislike your own technology is not good enough? The former is unlikely. After all, he speaks a lot more as an investor than the deputy director. In the latter's words, Zhang Zhan's face went dark. What are you looking at me for? Are you still counting on what you promised me last night? The two spoke at the same time and stopped at the same time, looking at each other. Zhang Zhan knew that he was talking about agreeing to give him the role of Lu Chuandeng, and he looked down upon his dedication to deal, but he was not an unbelieving person. Naturally, Count, someone will come over to talk to you about this later. After Zhang Zhan finished speaking, he went to the cloakroom in the cubicle to take clean clothes and take a bath. This hotel is also his investment industry, and this suite is his in the fixed room, all daily necessities and clothing are spared. Zhang Li glanced at his leaving back, then looked at the taskbar, and found that after Zhang Zhan finished speaking, his favorability for him dropped by 2 points, from 10 to 12. Zhang Li felt very inexplicable about this. What's the matter with the system? Sorry host, I don't know about this. Zhang Li felt that Zhang Zhan was really a fickle man. Ji Shu, Zhang Zhan's secretary, came over soon. Ji Shu is very young, about less than 30 years old, wearing a white shirt and trousers, wearing black rimmed glasses, the whole person is gentle and gentle. Seeing that it was Zhang Li who came to open the door, Ji Shu's eyes were a little surprised, but he quickly hid his eyes, and the red marks on Zhang Li's neck were swept away. When Sheng and Zhang Li said hello, "You okay? This is President Jiang's secretary Ji Shu, is he there?" Zhang Li had been in the entertainment industry for so many years in his previous life. He simply captured the emotions in the eyes of the other party. After a good response, he stepped aside and let him in. He is inside. Ji Shu went to the bedroom to look for Zhang Zhan. Zhang Xi knew that he should be the person Zhang Zhan said to talk to him about the role, and went back to the living room to sit down and wait. Soon Ji Shu came out again, and talked to Zhang Li about looping in the Long River. Ji Shu is a little curious about Zhang Li. As Zhang Zhan's secretary, he has seen many men and women in the entertainment industry who want to use Zhang Zhan's superior, including a sister from his own company, who has personally delivered it to the door, but no one in the past can really get Zhang Zhan's bed. Ji Shu secretly looked at Zhang Li, and found that the person in front of him had superior facial features and temperament. Even if such a look was put in the beauties of the entertainment circle, it was one of the best. No wonder he could make his own boss take a beating. Although he still doesn't know the background of the other party, Ji Shu is also more cautious. Zhang Li knew that Ji Shu was looking at him, and he didn't care. He sat in a relaxed posture and slowly drank tea, waiting for Ji Shu to speak actively, without any fear or restraint. After looking at it, Ji Shu said, "Mr. Zhang, President Zhang has already told me about the relevant matters. You want to participate in the filming of Lui Luyu, right?" "Yes." Zhang Li nodded generously, the roles of Lu Chuandeng and Lu Beizhu. "Excuse me to ask, have you read the original before?" Ji Shu asked. "Seen." Although Zhang Li hadn't seen it before, he had seen it in his original form, and he also got some information from it. Lu Chuandeng and Lu Beizhu are twins, but they have completely different personalities and experiences. The former is the governor of the Dongchang factory with a cold and weird personality, and the latter is the adopted son of a family with a naive and upright personality. This kind of character contrast is extremely high and the two roles of twins are very difficult to control. Generally, actors will not rashly challenge such a setting, because they require too much acting skills, and a little carelessness will expose their shortcomings. Zhang Xiang originally agreed with the deputy director not this role, but a decent role next to another male protagonist. The setting is quite satisfactory and does not require much acting skills, but he can also show his face in front of the camera because of the male protagonist and brush the audience. Face maturity. For Zhang Li, he needs more than just showing his face, he needs to explode. He is not afraid of challenges, he is afraid that there is no opportunity to challenge, and Lu Chuandeng and Lu Beizhu are his first challenges in the world's entertainment industry. Seeing that his answer was natural, Ji Shu didn't look like a fake, his heart was prepared, and he said again, I have contacted the director Kong of the crew. There are no suitable candidates for these two roles for the time being. Tomorrow if you are free, someone will take you to the crew. I'm free, I will trouble you. Zhang Li doesn't have any other jobs at the moment. He doesn't have much time, but he has the most time. You're welcome. Ji Shu smiled, took out his business card from his bag and handed it to Zhang Li. This is my business card. You can send me the contact information and address. I will send someone to pick you up tomorrow. Okay, thank you. After the matter was settled, Zhang Li had no interest in staying any longer, and after saying goodbye to Ji Shu, he prepared to pat his and leave. Ji Shu sent people to the door and saw him leaving without nostalgia. He couldn't help but ask, Mr. Zhang, don't you say hello to President Zhang? Why should I say hello to him? Zhang Li asked strangely. For someone like Zhang Zhan, the strategy can only be taken slowly, and from the way he pinches his neck in the morning, he knows how defensive he is. It might drop to 20 if you stay, that's not worth it. When Ji Shu looked at him like why should I do this, he suddenly understood the reason why he could successfully climb into the boss's bed. Because different. Ji Shu nodded thoughtfully, and changed his impression of Zhang Li a little, and found that he was not only good-looking, but also very personal. Such a person, if they have the conditions, may be able to do some great things, too. He thought about this, and when he looked back and saw Zhang Zhan standing silently behind him, he was taken aback. Mr. Zhang. He's gone. Zhang Zhan raised his chin and asked. There are only two of them here, and Ji Shu knows who he asked, just left. What did you say? I didn't say anything, I just made an appointment to go to the audition tomorrow and left. Working by Zhang Zhan for several years, Ji Shu still knew his temper, and instantly felt that Zhang Zhan's body pressure suddenly dropped, and the unspoken and walked without nostalgia silently swallowed back. At the same time, Zhang Li, who had already arrived downstairs, suddenly heard a ding, and the system voice sounded, Host, please pay attention, the male lead's favorability continues to decrease. If the favorability drops to 20, the host will be punished. Hearing this, Zhang Li quickly brought up the taskbar, and found that Zhang Zhan's favorability level had dropped again, currently at 15, which was only 5 distance from 20. Zhang Li. God's favorability, can the male lead stop making troubles so unreasonably? Zhang Zhan's face upstairs was also not very good. He walked towards the elevator door with a sullen face, and his whole body exuded the aura of the one who died close to me. He suddenly stopped a few steps away from the elevator and asked Ji Shu back. Who is Lu Chuandeng? Although the Long River and Fallen Moon was invested by Jiang's family, Zhang Zhan has never read novels and scripts. Lu Chuandeng. Ji Shu didn't know why he suddenly asked this, and he considered the adjectives and said, he is a villain in Luhiluyu, he is the governor of the East Factory, and his identity is less than 10,000 people. Supervisor of the East Factory. Yes, he is actually an eunuch. Zhang Zhan's expression at that moment is indescribable, so it is said that Zhang Li spends his time climbing the bed for the role of a eunuch? Can you be a little prosperous? The author has something to say. Zhang Zhan, am I worth the role of a eunuch? Author, you are afraid that even the role of is not worth it. Modified the president's settings, Sundaram Menzao seems to be more suitable for him. 2333. Zhang Li got out of the hotel and took a taxi back to the rental house where he had lived. After graduating from university, he rented a single room near the place where Zhang Xiang lived, so that he could help him with laundry, cooking, and cleaning. In this regard, Zhang Li had to admire the degree of original infatuation, and also deepened the degree of nausea towards Zhang Xiang. After returning to the room, Zhang Li found that the phone did not know when it was powered off. After plugging in the power and turning it on, a lot of information flooded in. Half of it was Zhang Xiang's call reminder, and half of it was Zhang Xiang who asked him why he didn't go to the hotel. Zhang Li didn't bother to pay attention to him, deleted the message, threw the cell phone silently aside for charging, took his pajamas to take a bath, and lay down directly after washing. Not long after this sleep, Zhang Li was awakened by a sudden and fierce knock on the door. Since I just graduated, I was looking for a rental room to save money and the soundproofing was not good. In addition to the banging door banging, I heard someone calling Zhang Li's name all the time. Zhang Xiang's memory for the original body is too deep. Even if he is replaced by Zhang Li, Zhang Xiang's influence on him still remains. Just listening to the sound of Zhang Li, he knew that Zhang Xiang was knocking on the door outside. Judging from the information in the mobile phone this morning, how much is coming to Xingxi to inquire? Zhang Li has a good temper in general, but one thing is not good, that is, he has a very serious anger when he is awakened by the outside world because of lack of sleep. When participating in a reality show in the previous life, one of the links was that teammates rated each other to wake each other up. In order not to destroy the integrity of the show and not want to cause trouble to the team, he just stayed up all night and cooperated with the filming of the show. Last night I was awake by Zhang Zhan for most of the night. Not long after I fell asleep, I was awakened by such rude knocking on the door. Zhang Kikai's head went into flames, and he got up on the bedside table without even thinking about it. The calendar book smashed hard, and the book with the metal edge slammed on the door with a boom. The people outside the door seemed to be shocked. The knocking stopped. Zhang Li covered the quilt and continued to sleep. Unexpectedly, the knock on the door rang again, with the tendency to become more and more severe. A posture of not giving up if you don't open the door. Oh shit! Zhang Li cursed violently, lifted the quilt and got out of bed. Host, don't swear, pay attention to manners. The system reminded. To shut up. System, today's host seems to be different, a little bit fierce. Zhang Li opened the door without wearing his shoes. A tall man, wearing a baseball cap and a mask, was standing outside the door in a gesture of patting the door. The door suddenly opened and his hand almost hit Zhang Li. Zhang Li's hand was swiftly swung away by Zhang Li's hand. Before he could react, he heard a gloomy voice, "Knock your mother, knock." Zhang Xiang. System. Zhang Xiang was stunned by Zhang Li's simple and rude "knock your mother." He had known Zhang Li for many years. He was timid and introverted in his impression. He had never heard him say swear words, even if he used his body. In exchange for a role for himself, he was just disappointed, not willing to scold himself. The person in front of me looks exactly the same as Zhang Li, even the small red mole on the tip of his nose, but he feels completely strange, whether it is the dark anger under his eyes or the cold and impatient expression on his face. Like a complete stranger wearing Zhang Li's skin, such an icy breath all over made Zhang Xiang take a step back. When he noticed Zhang Xiang's movements, Zhang Li sneered disdainfully, feeling that his original body was really a lard and he would like such a nasty thing, and it would not be good to stick it to himself. His laughter made Zhang Xiang come back to his senses, realizing that he was acting, his face was a little uncontrollable, and he stepped forward. The deputy director Zhang called me today and said that you didn't go to the hotel at all last night. What's the matter? What's going on? Zhang Li guessed what he was doing, didn't want to answer his question at all, and leaned back lazily by the door. It's your shit. Zhang Xiang was stunned, and his anger suddenly rose. He was about to break out, and remembered that he still needed his help. He suppressed his heart and asked, "Do you know how important this role is to me?" "It's my ass." Zhang Li asked lightly. The four-character truth slipped so that Zhang Xiang's anger almost didn't stop in his throat. Zhang Xiang scolded Zhang Li all over in his heart, but said softly, "Xiao Li, I know you are blaming me, but you also know how important this role is. We will rely on it in the future." "I am not." "Did you say it? We will be together when we get the role, and then you will move in and live with me." He would never talk to Zhang Li in such a low voice, but this is not the time. The anger of Deputy Director Zhang on the phone today still leaves him with lingering fears. He also promised that the other party will take Zhang Li personally tonight. Don't be angry with Zhang Li at this juncture. Zhang Li learned from Yuan Shen's memory that Yuan Shen had mentioned that he wanted to live with Zhang Xiang before, so that it would be convenient to take care of each other, but Zhang Xiang refused. Later, in order to coax Zhang away to dedicate himself, he offered to take the initiative. Zhang Li looked at Zhang Xiang up and down, from the strands of hair to the solace of his feet. He is a few centimeters shorter than Zhang Xiang. It stands to reason that he has a disadvantage in height confrontation, but when he looks at the opponent, he looks like a cheap item. The person who wants to live with him is the original body, not the current Zhang Li. Just like Zhang Xiang, living with Zhang Li is too hot. Zhang Xiang was irritated by his blatantly disgusting eyes. He didn't understand how he seemed to have suddenly changed after one night, but at this moment, he didn't have the intention to pursue it. He just wanted to quickly coax people to take him. So he said, "Xiao Li, don't make your temper, let me go in first. There are people walking in the corridor or coming out to collect clothes from time to time. After all, physical trading is not something that can be brought to the table." Although he is not well known now, he also has a small number of fans. It is always not good to be recognized. What he was worrying about, Zhang Li saw it through at a glance, and didn't intend to let him in, let alone waste time entangled with him more. This kind of disgusting scumbag who uses others in exchange for benefits often disagrees with him. "It's impossible to get in, Zhang Xiang, you don't want to come to me again in the future, we have nothing to do from now on, you can get out of here." After Zhang Li finished speaking, he was about to close the door. Zhang Xiang immediately blocked the door with one hand and said eagerly, "Wait, what do you mean by this? I have promised someone else to take you there tonight. You can't say nothing." Zhang Li didn't expect him to give up his heart. He couldn't help but feel that his dead body was worthless. The anger in his heart also surged upwards. Without a word, he kicked his stomach with his feet, with great force. Kicked the person directly against the half wall of the corridor. Ah! Zhang Xiang didn't expect that he would suddenly move his feet. He hit half of the wall and let out a cry of pain, even the hat on his head fell to the ground. System. The host felt really different today, super fierce. "Don't come to me again, otherwise killing you will only be a life for a life." Zhang Li coldly pointed to Zhang Xiang on the ground and finished, slamming the door shut, locking the person out. Zhang Xiang suffered a loss and was about to smash the door again. When the neighbor next to him heard the sound opening the door to see the situation, he was worried that he would be recognized, so he quickly picked up the hat on the ground and put on the hat and left in a hurry. After the incident, Zhang Li didn't have any interest in sleeping. He went back to the house and tidied up the original things related to Zhang Xiang, such as photos, clothes, posters, etc., and threw them in the trash can. After that, he felt that the house was pleasing to the eye. A lot. After cleaning up, he went out to cut his hair again, had a meal, and then went back to the house to slowly study the roles of Lu Chuandeng and Lu Beizu. Zhang Li has always been a very dedicated actor in his previous life. He will devote himself to studying every role he plays, substituting himself into the role to try to figure out the psychology of the role. If possible, he will even try the role experience. This study passed in one day. Zhang Li played 2 roles alone in the room and kept studying these 2 roles. Even the system felt that he was about to be schizophrenic. He had to remind him, "Host, you haven't had it for more than 8 hours. Have a meal." Zhang Li recovered from the system's voice and found that he was indeed hungry. "I didn't think it was in the scene just now." Only when he got out, he found his stomach was screaming all the time. "Then go for a meal first." Zhang Li turned off the computer, got up and went to the door, changing shoes while asking the system, "Is the way I hit someone handsome today?" The system thought of his rude "knock your mother" and the gesture of lifting a kick without saying anything. After a few seconds of silence, it said, "Yes." "Hey." Zhang Li put on his shoes, "You don't seem to agree." "You are handsome," the system said firmly. Zhang Li smiled with satisfaction and stretched his eyebrows, "You are also very cute, sweet little angel." System. Although I know that the host is saying that he reminded him to eat, why did he pick up a dummy data? There are many small restaurants nearby, and many of them close at 1 or 2 in the middle of the night. This will be no more than 10 o'clock, and there are still many people around. Zhang Li casually found a ramen restaurant and sat down, chatting with the system to pass the time while waiting to eat. "Little cute, do you want something to eat?" Zhang Li asked the system in his heart, flipping through the menu. "Thank you, host, I can't use it." The system thanked politely, hesitated for a moment, and then said, "Also, you just call me the system. Isn't cute little cute? Not very suitable. A virtual data called Xiao Cute. Well, it's not very straightforward to look at." "That's it." Zhang Li put the menu aside, propped his chin with one hand. "What an inappropriate method! Do you still have an anthropomorphic state? You are not cute enough." The system was speechless. "There is no anthropomorphic state." "All right, I won't tease you." Zhang Li chuckled lightly, thinking that his system was honest and cute. The 2 girls sitting at the table on the other side noticed him when Zhang Li came in, and they were talking about his appearance at the same time. "He looks good. Is he a star? It shouldn't be it. I'm so handsome, I definitely have the impression. The skin is so white. Envy. This Yan is too good at fighting, there is no dead angle in 360 degrees at all." The voices of the 2 of them were low. Zhang Ligu chatted with the system and didn't pay attention, but the system was completely audible. After listening carefully for a while, he agreed with their evaluation. The host's face is indeed very good at fighting, so the male lead caught it at a glance last night. However, the host seemed to be not very concerned about the main task of the hero. "Hey!" Zhang Li was about to eat noodles. Hearing this question, Zhang Li said, "I can't get this in a hurry." What does the host mean? People with Zhang Zhan's status will definitely be rushing to hold their thighs and ask for support. I will definitely not be able to ask for anything if I follow along. Zhang Li took a sip of noodles and took another sip of soup. The strong beef fragrance spread between his mouth and his teeth, which greatly satisfied his stomach after a day of emptying, and then explained it carefully to the system. As he said, Zhang Zhan's status is distinguished enough. In addition to being the president of the Zhang Group, his investment industry also involves catering and hotels. With this status, how many men and women who want to be in the upper ranks are eyeing them? If he pounced like other ordinary wind and waves, then for Zhang Zhan, it would be nothing more than a bed-climbing thing, and it was not worth his attention. On the contrary, he might as well leave a different impression in the other party's heart now. Anyway, he will enter the entertainment circle and sign a brokerage company in the future. I am not afraid that there will be no chance to meet again. Then it will be the time when he wants to start. I understand the truth, but... The system hesitated after hearing it, and kindly reminded, the male lead's favorability is currently 15. After reaching 20, you will be punished. You may need to understand this, host. Zhang Li choked on it, almost vomiting out, you are really not cute at all. System. Just now he clearly called me cute, the host is really a fickle man. The author has something to say, Zhang Li, the protagonist is really a fickle man. System, the host is really a fickle man. Zhang Zhan, a natural pair, sent to the bridal chamber. After eating and returning, Zhang Li spent another whole night studying the role. Although I didn't sleep all night, fortunately, the body was young, and I only felt a little tired, but the skin was too white, and there was inevitably a light blue under the eyes. 10 minutes before the appointment, Zhang Li received a call from Ji Shu, and the other party had already arrived downstairs. Ji Shule was a little surprised by picking himself up to the crew. Even if Zhang Zhan promised to give him the role, this kind of pick-up and drop-off work is almost the same as an ordinary assistant. There is no need for Ji Shu to come by himself. His question was quickly answered. Ji Shu explained that Lu Chuandeng and Lu Beizua both play very important roles in the play, especially Lu Chuandeng. As the biggest villain in the play, Lu Chuandeng is second only to the male and female protagonists, and can be said to be one of the core characters of the play. Such an important role requires acting skills very much, and it cannot be controlled by ordinary actors. Therefore, as the lead director, Zhou Jin attaches great importance to the casting of this character, and the role candidate must be auditioned in person. So Zhang Li needs to go to the audition this time, rather than just set it down. After Ji Shu finished speaking, the two looked at each other for a few seconds. Zhang Li thought of Zhang Zhan's promise to himself the night before, and the sentence yesterday morning, I asked the crew, why do you say me, and spit out 3 words quietly, cheat the gun. Ji Shu was taken aback by the word deception, feeling that the development of the matter seemed a bit wrong, and quickly explained, it is not what you mean, Mr. Zhang, don't get me wrong. The main reason is that the situation is a little bit special, even if the audition is not passed. President Zhang will also compensate you in other ways, and will not make you suffer, you will let. Stop talking, I know, I understand him. Zhang Li interrupted him gravely and nodded with an expression of I understand, he is also involuntarily. The president of a group worth hundreds of millions of dollars has fallen to the point of deception. Is it a lack of morality or a loss of humanity? At the same time, Zhang Zhan, who was having a meeting in the company conference room, suddenly sneezed. Although Zhang Xi's thoughts were not expressed, the expression in his eyes expressed everything. From the sentence I understand him, Ji Shu heard a strong although I am disappointed with the Golden Master's father, I still have to understand him. A feeling of Mr. Zhang is really a considerate person. Ji Shu thought in his heart that his impression of Zhang Li had improved a bit, and took the initiative to change the subject. Mr. Zhang drew eyeliner today, it looks pretty good. When we met just now, Ji Shu noticed that Zhang Li had drawn eyeliner. The black eyeliner was not too heavy, but only half a point was slightly elongated at the corner of his eye. The simple outline made his slightly dazzling eyeliner elongated as a whole. The original wave of light suddenly became a little strange. Ah, just ticked it, in order to fit the role. Zhang Li smiled, the original body does not have an eyeliner at home, he still used a soft pen to temporarily process it. That's it. Ji Shu nodded. He had also read the original work of The Long River and Fallen Moon, which really fits Lu Chuanden's setting. He took a few audition scripts from the back seat to Zhang Li, and asked him to choose one for the audition. There is still time on the road. You should familiarize yourself with the script first. Thank you, don't need Mr. Zhang, call me Zhang Li. Zhang Li said and picked one of the scripts. Ji Shu responded, and stopped disturbing him, and started the car to the audition location. When the two got there were many people waiting in the audition hall, and there was a long line outside each audition room, and there were a lot of staff connected to the waiting room. Zhang Li looked around slightly, and many actors in line were preparing, waiting for the staff to call. Ji Shu thought that Zhang Li had just received the script for the audition, and asked intimately, "Do you need to familiarize yourself with the lines?" "No need. Zhang Li has a very good memory. He didn't have many lines for the audition. He has learned by heart along the way, and after a day and night of research, he has some understanding of the two roles to be auditioned." Ji Shu went to say hello to the production staff, and soon someone came and led them to the audition room dedicated to Lu Chuandeng and Lu Beizhu. Compared with other audition rooms, there are not many people outside this audition room, but there are more than a dozen people, including 3 pairs of twins. Zhang Li is not surprised at this. Lu Chuandeng and Lu Beizhu are twins. Although they have different personalities and temperaments, they are exactly the same in appearance. With such 2 completely different roles, it is not as easy to play the 2 roles of one person as twins. The 2 had just arrived there when the door of the audition room opened from the inside, and a pair of twins came out from the inside. The faces of the 2 were frustrated. It was obvious that the interview was not successful. A staff member who came out behind them saw Ji Shu and took the initiative to greet him, because he had already been notified that he had brought someone to the audition, so he asked in there if he didn't say anything. Zhang Li and Ji Shu entered, leaving the others waiting for the audition to look at each other and discuss in a low voice. "Who is that person? How to jump in the line?" one of the actors asked. "Did the one in the white shirt see it?" "That is the secretary of Jiang's group, President Jiang." "The other one hasn't seen it. Is he also an actor?" the other person also asked curiously. "What is the background of the person who can let President Jiang's secretary bring the audition in person? Could it be the default?" As soon as the door of the audition room closed, Zhang Li didn't know what the people outside were discussing. As soon as he entered the audition room, he found that the air pressure inside was a little low. To be precise, the air pressure of the middle-aged man in the middle of the judging platform was very low, and his appearance was as sinking as water, making the atmosphere in the entire space very low. On the desk card in front of the man, the word Zhou Jin was written, that is, the main director of the crew. Regarding Zhou Jin's information, Zhang Li also checked on the internet last night. Zhou Jin, 49 years old, is a well-known gold director in the circle. Judging from his mood at this time, it should be that the casting of Lu Chuandeng and Lu Beizhu was not smooth. Ji Shu greeted him in the past and introduced Zhang Li by the way. Zhang Li nodded his head to say hello to everyone present. He was respectful but not flattering. Unlike other actors who auditioned, he would take advantage of each other when he said hello. When Zhou Jin saw Zhang Li's first glance, he was surprised at his overly refined but not feminine appearance, and then he took it for granted. The person who can let his nephew personally say that he wants a role must look good. In addition to Zhou Jin's identity as the director of the crew, another identity is Zhang Zhan's uncle. Regarding Zhang Zhan saying that he would give Zhang Li the role, he disagreed, and only promised to give Zhang Li an audition opportunity. Zhou Jin bluntly said that if other ordinary characters do not affect the overall situation, even if the other party has no acting skills, he can look at his nephew's face and close a glance, but Lu Chuandeng and Lu Beizhu are the 2 roles he cannot give up because once if the requirements for the core roles are relaxed, then the effect of this drama will be greatly reduced. Unless he is replaced as the director, there is no discussion. He looked at Zhang Li and didn't mention his acting skills. At least he looked satisfactory, in line with the Lu family twins he imagined. The outstanding looks of Lu Chuandeng and Lu Beizhu were described in the original work by the author who spent a lot of pen and ink, and piled up all kinds of beautiful rhetoric on the 2 of them. It is not an exaggeration to say that they are the most outstanding characters in the book. In order to fit the original work and give the book fans an intuitive sense of restoration, Zhou Jin's first requirement when selecting actors to play them was that they had to look good. After all, Lu Chuandan's ability to climb to the position of the governor of the East Factory had an inseparable relationship with his appearance in the early stage. Of course, looks are not enough, acting is also the top priority. Both are indispensable. Otherwise, there are so many good-looking people in the entertainment industry. Zhang Li, right? Are you ready? A woman with curly hair next to Zhou Jin asked Zhang Li. The Deca in front of her said Yellow Oriole Sheng. She was one of the producers and screenwriters of Long River Falling in the Moon. Ready? Zhang Li nodded slightly. Teachers, the content of my audition this time is the plot of Lu Chuandan's meeting with Liu Beizu after the massacre of Shen Jiamen. When he said this, everyone present was stunned. The Long River and Fallen Moon is an overhead ancient novel set in the 21 years of the Southern Dynasty. Lu Chuandang is the biggest villain in the book. He is only 20 to 6 years old, but his identity is more than 10,000 people under one person. He is the in charge of the governor of the East Factory. The book mentions that Lu Chuandan's family was poor, his father died early, and the only elder in the family was his mother. He was sent to the palace by his mother at the age of 7 and was tortured and divided into royal dining rooms. Later, when he was 11 years old, he was received by the chief of Shanghai supervisor because of his outstanding appearance. He was tortured and insulted and almost died several times. During the years at Shanghai supervisor, Lu Chuandang was exhausted by the filthy methods deep in the palace. He wandered about life and death again and again. He thoroughly understood the importance of power, and his personality became cold and innocent at first weird. He lied and succumbed to snakes, with a sword in his mouth, flattery, fell into a stone, and even cruel to the innocent. He did everything he despised at the beginning. Step by step, he stepped on the blood and tears of others and his own to crawl from the bottom of the playthings that were slaughtered and played by people to the position of the in the hands of the superintendent. Later, he served as the governor of the East Factory, an extremely human minister. The experiences of Liu Beizu and Lu Chuandang are completely opposite. At the age of 7, after Lu Chuandang was sent to the palace, Liu's mother relied on the money he sold to send Liu Beizu into the school. It was in the school that Liu Beizu met the male lead. The male protagonist is the youngest son of the Murong family, one of the 4 largest families in the southern dynasties. He was sent to a country house to reflect on his troubles in Beijing. The 2 children met each other and quickly established a deep friendship. Once Liu Beizu saved cramps and drowned the hero. 2 years later, Liu's mother was killed in an accidental fire at home. The male lead took Liu Beizu home. The Murong family was grateful that he had saved the male lead and adopted him as an adopted son. Together with the male lead, he was sent to the mountains to learn art. Liu Beizu, who was taken care of by his mother personally since he was a child, and was adopted as a son by a wealthy family after his mother died, never has to worry about food and clothing. He also has a carefree life in the mountains, and his personality has always maintained the innocence of a young person. High-spirited, even forgot that he had an older brother who was sent to the palace because of his family background, until Murong's family passed a letter saying that when the was in power today, the killed Zhongliang and led to the chaos in the DPRK, so that the 2 of them returned quickly. The name Lu Chuandang once again entered Liu Beizu's sight, and he finally remembered his brother who had not seen him for many years. The plot chosen by Zhang Li for the audition this time was the first meeting of the 2 since the separation when he was 7 years old. Liu Beizu saw Lu Chuandang but the scene behind the door. Zhou Jin has a habit when choosing each core role, that is, in addition to the original audition book, he will prepare several audition scripts, and let the good performers draw lots to perform. This is also a test of the actor's ability to perform on site. Apart. But he didn't expect that Zhang Li would choose this one under the condition of choosing the script. This is a very difficult scene to interpret. In the book, when Lu Chuandang became the head of the internal supervision officer, he asked someone to inquire about Liu's mother and his younger brother. Became the adopted son of Murong's family. There are two possibilities for people who will choose this script. One is that they have real skills, knowing that although the scene is difficult, it is a script that can express a person's acting skills, and the other is that the essence of the script is not even included in the random selection. Whether Zhang Li was the former or the latter, no one in the room knew, but as soon as his words came out, everyone's eyes focused on him, even Zhou Jin, who had no hope of him at first, suddenly sat upright. Body. The author has something to say, Zhang Li Pao Zhan. Zhang Zhan, I am not, I don't. The performance began when Lu Chuandeng ordered the slaughter of the Shen family on the grounds that the Shen family was collaborating with the enemy and betrayed the country and resisted arrest. Standing in the middle of the open space, Zhang Li closed his eyes, brewed a little emotion, and then slowly opened. After he opened his eyes, for him, the place where he was no longer the audition room, but the house of Shen who was slaughtered in the book. He stood with his hand in the middle of the field, his originally humble and polite expression slowly gathered up, and the gloomy eyes appeared a little bit, his gaze slowly swept across the ground, and his slightly drooping eyelids looked cold and strange under the extension of the eyeliner. Just a slight change in his eyes made his temperament suddenly gloomy. In the play, Zhou Jin was startled. He was so startled by the speed at which he assumed the role that he almost stood up, staring at him closely. Zhang Li's gaze swept from every part of the room, the corners of his lips were lightly raised, with superficial excitement and madness, as if the open space was really covered with stumps and broken arms. He was like a winner, testing the result of a massacre. At the place where his gaze was swept, the staff who happened to stand there met his gaze inadvertently. After touching the gloomy and crazy killing intent inside, the hair on his back suddenly exploded. Zhou Jin clenched his hands on the table unconsciously, and saw that Zhang Li's glance stopped, and suddenly walked forward slowly, staring at a certain place. The smile on the corners of his lips became stranger and thinner, and the soles of his feet stepped on the ground. He didn't care about the blood stains, and finally stopped in front of a staff member. The staff was staring at him so that their scalp was numb, and his heart tightened, and he almost couldn't control it and took a step back. Master Shen! Zhang Li called out aloud, and everyone discovered that his voice had changed. In King Yu, there are hints of sharpness and weirdness, which is a unique voice of an eunuch. Among the actors who auditioned before, some people have noticed this, but non-professional voice actors are somewhat weak in this regard. Unsuccessful voice change will lead to conflicts between roles and voices and make the audience play. But Zhang Li doesn't have this problem at all. He seems to be a professional voice actor, and every sentence is just right. Everyone understands that he is temporarily using staff to act as the opponent. Master Shen is right. What I can do is just to relieve the sage's worries. Zhang Li walked his hands lightly on the spot for a few times, and said with a smile, "You curse a little bit louder, it's too late. You have no chance to speak." As soon as the sound fell, he shook his hand to the side, and swiftly pulled out a sword on the prop shelf, stepped back and waved. The sword peak swept from bottom to top, and the silver light flashed. One sword is deadly. Throwing the sword to the ground casually, Zhang Li glanced at the ground in disgust, and flicked the bullet shirt. It seemed that there was a little blood stained on it. When he was about to leave, his footsteps stopped abruptly. In the novel, he reunited with brother Liu Beizu here. Two identical faces, one in dusty white clothes and the other in blood-soaked black clothes. A slightly surprised expression appeared on Zhang Li's face, and he looked forward with weird eyes, and it was Zhou Jin sitting in front of him. The moment the two looked at each other, Zhou Jin suddenly felt like he was taken into the play. The person in front of him was no longer Zhang Li, but the Lu Chuandeng who covered the sky with one hand. Before this scene in the script, Lu Chuandeng had already learned about Liu Beizu's adoption by the Murong family. He spent 9 days in the palace and lived like a ghost or a man, but his brother enjoyed the prosperity of the family. An extremely strong resentment was tumbling. Zhang Li felt hateful and ridiculous. He stared at Zhou Jin gloomily, as if he was the Liu Beizu who accused him in the play, "You can eat rice, but you can't talk nonsense, our family but working for the emperor." When talking about the emperor, Zhang Li made a gesture with his hand. The next second was as if he was irritated by what Liu Beizu said. With a flick of his sleeves, his voice was suddenly lowered, and he even forgot to claim, "Shut up. You said I'm cruel to Zhongliang, cholera Kazun? So what do you know?" In order to make a living at home, the mother chose to send herself into the palace among the twins, just because she was not enough for her younger brother to please her. During the years when he was in the palace, he always expected his mother to take a look at him every time he saw letters sent from home by others, asking himself whether it hurts or not. But he couldn't even wait for a word. "You have a happy life at Murong's house. Have you ever thought about my life in the palace? Now come and talk to me about brotherhood." Every time he said a word, he took a step forward, watching Zhou Jin's eyes with the killing intent that had not disappeared just now, and sneered, "The Murong family only taught you to be naive and stupid. Didn't the Murong family teach you to protect your life? Garbage, don't blame me for not reading about blood, and send you down to reunite with your parents." After the words were finished, the killing intent of the whole body was revealed, which meant that Liu Beizu would be happy after killing Liu Beizu. Zhou Jin tensed his body and stared at him without saying a word. There was no emotion on his face, but a cold sweat was forced out on his back by his piercing eyes. The plot of Lu Juandan's audition ended here, but after Zhang Li's performance was over, the audition room remained quiet as a chicken. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the young man in the middle of the venue, and their hearts were still shocked by the role he played just now. It seems that the ruthless and brutal Dongchang supervisor in the novel really appeared in front of him. Good. Huang Lisheng was the first to come back to his senses, and was about to clap his hands in applause. At the beginning of the conversation, Zhou Jin stretched out his hand and held it down, quietly stopping, "Don't talk, he hasn't played yet." Huang Lisheng was reminded by him that he found that Zhang Li in front of him was still in the play, but the expression of the yin bird slowly faded away, turning into shock and anger. It turned out that Zhang Li was in Liu Beizu's play. After playing a role, she seamlessly connects and directly enters another completely different role, continuing to perform the same scene. Such a scene makes her incredibly hard to believe. But the people in front of them actually did it. After Lu Juandan's tyrannical and cold-blooded aura faded, he seemed to have changed another person, with the integrity and hardiness of a family elder brother. As soon as he opened his mouth, Liu Beizu's anger toward his relatives became so cold-blooded and merciless. Disappointment and painful emotions are expressed unreservedly. Obviously they are the same person, but in a short period of time they acted two people with huge differences between the North and the South, and expressed both the exposed emotions and the extreme psychological changes of the two characters. Such a solid and terrifying acting is not to say that it is an actor who is currently auditioning, and even the acting school in the circle can hardly pick a few comparable. At this moment, Zhou Jin suddenly thanked his nephew very much, and dug out such a treasure for himself, and he was also glad that he let go of giving him a chance to audition, otherwise he would definitely lost what he loved. "My performance is over, thank you judges and teachers." Zhang Li bowed slightly in the eyes of a group of people who were astonishing and unbelievable, and said to the judges in front of him. Zhou Jin stood up, applauded the newcomer who had never met before but gave him a visual feast, and said sincerely, "Zhang Li, the crew of Luyi welcomes you." After him, the others gradually recovered and applauded. Huang Lisheng liked Zhang Li's performance very much, and asked a few more words. "You performed very well. Have you had any acting experience before? I don't seem to have seen you before. It's the first time for a formal performance. I used to think about it at home, and there are many unfamiliar places." Zhang Li smiled shyly, as if he was a little embarrassed to praise her, and bowed again. "In the future, I would like to ask all teachers for your advice." After finishing speaking, I apologized to the staff who had just been used as a temporary opponent and asked for understanding. He is good-looking, polite, and good at acting, and instantly captured the goodwill of the people present. After thanking everyone again, Zhang Li left the audition room after leaving his contact information. Before Zhang Li started performing, Ji Shu just took a work call and left the audition room. Zhang Li came out and saw that he was still calling from a distance, so he waited aside. When Ji Shu came back after handling the matter, he saw Zhang Li lowered his head and leaned against the wall, thinking that he hadn't auditioned, and walked over and comforted him. It's just a role. Don't care too much about Ali, just take it as accumulating experience. Zhang Li was chatting with the system and asked if he was handsome when he auditioned. He suddenly heard Ji Shu's voice and didn't react. What did you say? Ji Shu only thought that he was too sad, dazed, and comforted. I said it doesn't matter if the audition is not available this time. Mr. Zhang said, if you want, you can arrange it for you. Ms. Zhang. Before he could finish his words, he was suddenly interrupted by a voice coming from behind. When he turned around, he saw a staff member coming up, greeted him first, and then handed a piece of material to Zhang Li. Mr. Zhang, this Sister Huang asked me to give it to you. As for the role analysis of the two brothers Lu Chuandeng, you may use it. For the use, thanks Sister Huang for me. Zhang Li smiled and took it, guessing that it was the reason for the first performance that he said just now, and the other party would give him this information. Okay, Mr. Jiang's performance today is very exciting. I'm going back first. Ji Shu on the side heard the clouds and mist, looked at the leaving staff, and then at the smiling Zhang Li. His face was shocked. Mr. Zhang. Hey. Zhang Li shook the information in his hand. It's almost noon. In order to celebrate that I got my favorite role, will Secretary Ji to have a meal together with my face? Eat. Ji Shu felt that he might have missed some wonderful plot. Why did he suddenly become Teacher Zhang? After the two had lunch, Ji Shu sent Zhang Li back to the company before going to the company, and then gave feedback to Zhang Zhan of today's situation. Zhang Zhan was very surprised when he heard that Zhang Li passed the audition. He originally thought that Zhang Li must have returned without success this time. He didn't expect that he would get the roles of Lu Chuandeng and Lu Beizu by his own ability. Regarding Zhang Li's direct entry into the group, Uncle refused, bluntly saying that unless he is replaced as the director, he must pass the audition to play these two roles. Zhang Zhan understands his attitude towards the film's excellence, and will not replace a gold director for a gadget that has only been in bed once, but he also agreed to Zhang Li. Although Zhang Li climbed the bed for the sake of unspoken rules and climbed the wrong way, overall he had a good time that night. Zhang Li is also a type he likes, so he can't let him suffer. That's why Ji Shu went to deal with it today. If he didn't pass the audition, he would compensate Zhang Li in addition. It's just that Zhang Li won two important roles under his demanding uncle. The is pretty awesome. Zhang Zhan was inexplicably happy, leaning on the leather chair, and asked Ji Shu, then did he say anything to compensate? Not yet, Mr. Zhang said that he understands you very much. Ji Shudeo. Understand me very much? It doesn't seem to be too unconscionable. Although he didn't directly give him the role, it was because of him that he had the role of audition, which is also his own credit. Seeing that Zhang Li knows how to be grateful, Zhang Zhan decided to treat him better. You go and check, if he doesn't have an assistant by his side, make arrangements for him before joining the group. Yes, President Zhang. Ji Shu responded, seeing that he planned to leave without other instructions. He was stopped after 2 steps. Zhang Zhuang asked casually, did he say anything else? For example, if you want to treat me to a meal, thank me, etc. Other. Ji Shu hesitated for a moment. Some things he didn't know should be said improperly. Say if you have anything. Zhang Zhan frowned when he saw him hesitate. Mr. Zhang said you cheated. Zhang Zhan's expression instantly solidified, and the clouds were covered at a speed visible to the naked eye. He gritted his teeth and said, get out, Get out, go. Jishu rolled numbly. At the same time, Zhongli, who was concentrating on researching character information on the other side, suddenly heard the system's rapid warning sound. Host, please pay attention. The male protagonist's favorability degree is rapidly decreasing, the male protagonist's favorability degree is rapidly decreasing, and the male protagonist's favorability degree is rapidly decreasing. Zhongli called up the taskbar and found that the favorability column dropped directly to 25. Zhongli looked blank. The author has something to say, Zhang, I'm so angry that I'm so close to passing away on the spot. The requirement for the completion of the task is that the actor's favorability degree must reach 100%, and the favorability degree below 20 will be punished. Zhongli was bewildered by the sudden drop in his favorability. He had never seen Zhang since he was in the hotel. The two of them had no rivals. Why did they lower their favorability for no reason? He stared at the piece on the tablet for a long time, and clicked to refresh it several times without giving up, and asked the system, "Baby, is your junk system malfunctioning again? I checked the backend just now, and the data is all normal." The system also felt strange, so Zhongli checked it first without asking, and found that all the data was proceeding in an orderly manner. "Are you sure?" Zhongli doubted. "Sure. Then what's the temper of this neurosis?" After confirming that it was not a system failure, Zhongli felt a bit big-head. His current mind is not on the strategy of Zhang. Compared with falling in love with the other party, acting is more attractive to him, but the current goodwill value makes him have to put down his work and go to the main task. This made him feel like his plan was being disrupted, not very refreshing. "Sorry host, I don't know this." The system thought for a while, "Maybe he is a fickle man as you said." Zhongli felt that he was really a crow's mouth and rubbed his temples and asked, "Okay. If the favorability score is -20, you will be punished. What if it is -100? It will be cut back." The system replied. "I chose to cut the number and start again." Zhongli said blankly, fed up with Zhang, an unreasonable man, "Please give me a new target. I'm very sorry for the host. After the number is chopped, we can only come back in this world. As long as the task is not completed, it will continue to cycle. In addition, before the negative value reaches 100, the host must be punished every time it reaches 20. Your game is poisonous." Zhongli had no words to say. He resignedly reached out and clicked on the punishment reminder with the yellow light on the tablet, and found that there were 2 punishment options written on it. "Zhongli, what does this mean?" There was no detailed explanation on the punishment, and only the meaning of the 2 punishments could be interpreted literally, but the literal meaning alone made Zhongli feel very bad. To live to die to live means that the host will experience the pain of the body being decomposed, and cannot survive, and the pain lasts for about half an hour. The system explained. "How painful?" Zhongli asked curiously. "It's probably like a female childbirth." The system described it uncertainly, after all, it hadn't tried it. "It's as if you gave birth." Zhongli was amused by it. "You know a lot, cute." The system was silent for a while at the ridicule in Zhongli's words, "Master host can try it." It was obviously a mechanical sound, but Zhongli seemed to hear its helplessness, and put away his thoughts of molesting. "What about the second one?" "The second one is literally." Zhongli read the words desire to die again, and blinked, "Isn't that what I meant?" "Yes." The system replied, "The target person is the male lead, please be prepared for the host." Your game is actually an adult R18, right? It's going to be banned in our world. Zhongli, what kind of punishment is this called? This is obviously to create opportunities for him and the hero. The system was silent and seemed to agree with him. Zhongli knew that he couldn't concentrate on his work if he didn't solve the problem of negative opinion. He put away the system tablet, got up to get his mobile phone, and called Jishu. Secretary Ji, can I trouble you one thing? I want to make an appointment with Mr. Zhang. You can make an appointment for me, best tonight. I want to talk to him Bing, Zhu, yet, and yet. System. Just do it, the host is really good. After Ji Shu hung up the phone, he pondered for a while about the Bingzhu night talk that Zhang Li had just said. Combined with the boss's emotional change just now, he just smelled a hint of adultery. Working with Zhang Zhan for several years, Ji Shu remembers that the other party has always had no interest in men and women, nor does he treat his company's artists like other entertainment company bosses. He has been seduced by a glamorous female secretary before. He was even thrown out of the office. The combination of all these signs made Ji Shu very suspicious that his boss was unspeakable in some respects, which led to his unsettled character. In this regard, I can't help but sigh that the creator is too fair. When opening all the doors to the boss, he even closed one of his windows. But I didn't expect Zhang Li's appearance to reopen the boss's window. From what Zhang Zhan said before arranging an assistant for Zhang Li, Ji Shu can see that he is interested in Zhang Li, whether it is physical or other aspects, at least there is, after all, Zhang Li is not only good-looking. He has acting skills and can open the window in his heart. The meaning of Zhang Li's call seemed to mean that he wanted to open another window for the boss. Bing Zui talked about what to talk about, this is self-evident. Thinking of this, Ji Shu didn't delay any more, got up and went to Zhang Zhan's office. In the office, Zhang Zhan was getting so angry with Ji Shu's sentence. Mr. Zhang said you cheated the gun. He hadn't investigated Zhang Li for getting out of bed. Instead, he first accused him of cheating the gun. What kind of beauty does he want as the executive president of Jiang's group? As for deceiving him, a man with only a few looks? Besides, I promised to compensate him even if he is auditioning. It doesn't matter if he is an idol drama actor. He not only doesn't appreciate it, but says he cheated on him? The president of Jiang's group cheats the gun? This said it's going to be on Weibo's hot search headlines. Zhang Zhan became more and more angry, wondering if he should teach this ignorant guy a good meal. He saw Ji Shu knocking on the door and coming in, as if he had something to report. He drew back his expression, and asked him what's the matter with his eyes. Mr. Zhang, I just received a call from Mr. Zhang. Ji Shu said here, noticing that the pen in Zhang Zhan's hand paused for a moment, and then went on to say, he said he would like to invite you to meet tonight and ask if you enjoy your face. Meet me? Zhang Zhan was still thinking about how to clean up this little bastard. He didn't expect that he would send it to the door at this time. He hummed in his heart and made a pretense, but there was no fluctuation on his face. Ask me to meet. Yes, he said he wanted to talk to you Bing Zui. Ji Shu emphasized the tone of Bing Zui talk. He secretly observed Zhang Zhan's reaction and found that the pen in his hand had been completely put down. In Bing Zui talk, the 4 words successfully evoked the memories of Zhang Zhan and Zhang Li that night. At that time, the unspeakable pleasure that was so refreshing that the pores were all relaxed was poured into my mind again. The feeling was like the hearty feeling of a traveler who has been walking in the desert for many years and encounters an oasis. Zhang Li's blurred eyes, bare back, depressed and unable to contain the overflowing low snort, appeared in front of him like a nightmare, just imagination. Zhang Zhan felt that there was a blood flow in his body that was eager to heat up, and urgently needed to be relieved. It is undeniable that he really became interested in the man named Zhang Li. Ji Shu saw that he was silent suddenly, his expression seemed to be a little empty, and he softly reminded, Ms. Zhang. Zhang Zhan regained his senses, suppressed the charming thoughts in his heart, and said in a displeased tone, who does he think I am Zhang Zhan? Can I make an appointment if I want? I don't weigh my identity. Ji Shu didn't expect this to be the result. Seeing him look disinterested, he wondered if he was too worried. After hesitating for a while, he said, Okay, I know, then I'll go and reply to Mr. Zhang. After speaking, he turned to leave. After walking a few steps, he heard another sentence coming from behind. Book a box in the skyscraper at 7 o'clock in the evening. Ji Shu paused, and when he looked back, he saw Zhang Zhan looking at the documents as if nothing had happened, as if this sentence was not what he said. He couldn't help but admire his ability to pretend that the boss is the boss, and the pretense is too slick. Okay, President Zhang. After coming out of the president's office, Ji Shu first booked a dining room, and then called Zhang Li to make an appointment to pick him up. After doing everything, he sat in his seat and sighed, the rich can really play. After making an appointment with Ji Shu, Zhang Li threw the phone aside. The matter was resolved and he didn't have the thought of studying the role, so he planned to make up for a sleep first. As soon as I lay down, the phone rang again, and Zhang Li picked up an unfamiliar number. Hey! Zhang Li, why can't you get through on the phone? You blocked me, didn't you? Let me tell you. Zhang Xiang's voice came from the other end of the phone, and Zhang Li hung up directly. Soon a message came in, you will regret it sooner or later. Zhang Li felt that this Zhang Xiang was simply boring. He had no abilities, and it was quite smooth to speak ruthlessly. He started to pull the other party's number into the blacklist again. Host, why didn't you tell Zhang Xiang that you were selected for the role of Lui Luyu? If he knew that he couldn't make it into the cast, you would easily get in, and he would be very angry. The system asked strangely. I told him, it's not as exciting as what he saw with his own eyes. Zhang Li said. People like Zhang Xiang are not very capable and have a good tone. Even if you tell him, he can't believe it. That's it. The system understands, and it is indeed better to hear than to see. When he wakes up, Zhang Li takes a shower before going out. When he puts on his clothes, he looks at himself in the mirror. He thinks he might need a little assist, so he called up the system tablet and clicked on the ice and snow skin like jade in the novice bonus. Pill. As soon as something entered his abdomen, Zhang Li felt a refreshing sensation radiating from his body, and his skin looked like it had been repaired in just 2 minutes. Zhang Li rubbed the skin on his arm with his fingers in surprise, and found that it was indeed too smooth and delicate, with a touch like mutton tallow and white jade. Although the skin of the original body is good, the effect after the repair is almost as if it is against the sky. It is really a cheap male protagonist. Zhang Li went downstairs, and when he walked outside the intersection, he saw Ji Shu, who was already waiting next to the car. He speeded up a little bit. As soon as he arrived, he reminded him that Zhang Zhan was in the car. Zhang Li glanced at the closed car window, understood what he meant, approached the window and tapped twice. The window slowly fell, revealing Zhang Zhan's handsome and expressionless side. Thinking of the negative favorability score, Zhang Li suppressed the urge to hit his dog's head and greeted him with a smile, Mr. Zhang. Yet. Zhang Zhan paused, his eyes on his face for a few seconds, feeling that he seemed to be a little paler again, and his skin was glowing. Thank you for taking the time to see me out of your busy schedule, shall we go? Zhang Li asked. Zhang Zhan nodded, get in the car. Zhang Li gave an okay gesture, then walked around the car, opened the co-pilot's door, and sat in. Zhang Zhan in the back seat. You are so capable, why don't you just sit in the driver's seat and drive? The author has something to say, is President Zhang angry today? She has become a pufferfish. In fact, Zhang Zhan completely misunderstood Zhang Li. Zhang Li chose the co-pilot because he was inexplicably lost his favorability. He was not sure if Zhang Zhan had any opinion on him, and it was not easy to sit next to him, so as not to lose his favor after being touched by the mold. The two have their own thoughts, and of the three in a car, Ji Shu is under the most pressure. Seeing the boss's gloomy expression in the rear-view mirror, he felt the urge to get out of the car. The place for dinner was set at a Western-style restaurant on the 138th floor of a skyscraper. From the floor-to-ceiling windows of the box, you could overlook the night view of half of the city. When he got off the car, Zhang Zhan opened his hand to him when he passed by Ji Shu. Ji Shu wittily put the car key in his hand and watched him and Zhang Li step into the elevator. Become a retreat. Ji Shu knows Zhang Zhan's dining taste well, and he also asked Zhang Li's preferences in advance, and ordered the meal in advance according to the habits of the two. City night view, romantic candlelight, melodious violin, elegant white rose, delicious steak, top wine, everything. It should have been a very romantic and emotional meal, but neither of the two of you here put their thoughts on the exquisite food on the table. Zhang Li was still wondering how to improve his favorability later, eating absent-mindedly, while Zhang Zhan's attention was always on him. Ever since he learned that Zhang Li was going to talk with him at Bingzuoye, Zhang Zhan felt as if a restless kitten was scratching his heart. The implied meaning of these 4 words is too heavy. Anyone who listens to it will feel that it means sex, and he is naturally no exception. What happened on the first night can be said to be a misunderstanding, but this time Zhang Li came to the door by himself. Zhang Zhan felt liver pain when he mentioned these 2 words. Before going out, he still thought that Zhang Lihao's face would not be shown to Zhang Lihao's meal tonight, so that he would know who he was, and don't get cheap and sell well. I didn't know that from the beginning of the meal. The other party didn't even look at him. What Bingzuoye talked about, the candle was lit, he poured it out, and he didn't even put a fart. Did you misunderstand what he meant? What do you say about cheating yourself? He is the one who cheated the rice. The more Zhang Zhan thought about it, the more he felt that this person was teasing himself. After the meal, Zhang Zhan took off his suit jacket from the shelf beside him, and walked out without looking at Zhang Li. Zhang Li followed him to the parking lot to pick up the car. As soon as the two got into the car, Zhang Zhan said, "I will take you back." "Hey!" Zhang Li recovered from his thoughts and shook his head as he watched him. "No, I don't plan to go back tonight." Hearing this, Zhang Zhan stopped the action of inserting the key in his hand, and turned his head to look at him, just in time to meet the line of sight he was looking at, and he was silent for a moment. "What do you mean? Didn't I talk to you, Bingzuoye?" Zhang Li said with a smile, propped his elbow between the 2 seats. "Bingzuoye talked?" With these 4 words again, Zhang Zhan sneered when he thought of the way he ignored him just now. "What do you use to talk about it? Did you seduce other people like this for your role before? For example, the associate director of the crew?" Zhang Li didn't know how he suddenly mentioned the assistant director, and he looked like he was very ignorant. He said innocently, "Mr. Zhang, you can't say that. I have lived for 21 years, but I only seduce you." Zhang Zhan was taken aback. "Only seduce yourself?" That means it was indeed the first time Zhang Li had with himself. After catching this information, Zhang Zhan's depression in his heart dissipated a little, and his mood was back on the right track after a big turn, but he asked unmovedly, "Really?" Zhang Li was about to answer when he suddenly heard a system prompt in his head, "Host, the male protagonist's favorability has increased by 5%, and the current favorability is -20. Friendship has risen?" Zhang Li was a little surprised at first, but suddenly he got something, and there was a light in Zhang Zhan's eyes. "What are you doing looking at me like this?" Zhang Zhan was a little uncomfortable with his gleaming eyes. "Mr. Zhang." Zhang Li leaned over, narrowed the distance with him, and answered the wrong question, "Did you have a happy night that evening?" That night refers to the night when the two knew each other well. His words made Zhang Zhan's thoughts that were already eager to be moved again today, and when he met the expectant eyes in front of him, a flame slowly ignited in his heart, and the space of the entire carriage suddenly became a little hot. "It's a monster. It's okay." Zhang Zhan staggered his gaze, reluctantly said. "Is it just a little bit?" Zhang Li was dissatisfied with his avoidance, and moved a little closer, "To be honest. Otherwise." Zhang Zhan stepped back a bit, frowning, "What are you doing so close to me?" Zhang Li didn't answer, stretched out his hand to hold his tie to stop him from moving back, leaned forward and pressed the tip of his nose against the tip of his nose, turning his head slightly before touching his meager lips. With 4 lips touching, Zhang Zhan's hands holding the steering wheel tightened slightly, feeling his lips gently rubbed a few times, and lingering on his lips, there was a secret numbness spreading from his back because of his behavior. The two were very close. Zhang Zhan smelled the refreshing and indifferent scent in his hair. If there is a seemingly non-existent scent around the tip of his nose, he subconsciously opened his mouth to hold the soft lips. As soon as he moved, the other party pulled a little further away. Zhang Zhan was very dissatisfied with this kind of provocation. He wanted to step forward and rebel. He heard Zhang Li's smiling voice, "Give me a chance." Zhang Zhan moved for a while. "What? Make you happier tonight?" Zhang Zhan felt that this little was so ridiculous that he was so dizzy that he felt dizzy when a 17 or 18-year-old hairy boy first tasted love. It's still the same hotel last time, and it's the same room. As soon as the door was closed, Zhang Zhan rudely pressed the person on the door and kissed. The heartbeat in his chest banged loudly, and he couldn't tell who it was. Zhang Leho looked at Zhang Zhan condescendingly, brightly proud of his delicate eyebrows, open and beautiful. Zhang Zhan was so excited by his appearance that his Adam's apple slid up and down, and there was a feeling of heat in his heart, as if he had picked up some treasure. Having lived for 32 years, Zhang Zhan had this experience for the first time, unfamiliar but not annoying. This person should be mine. Zhang Zhan thought of this in his heart. He looked at the person in front of him with a wrong eye, and asked in a low voice, "Zhang Li, tell me, what do you want? What do you want?" Zhang Li tilted his head to think, shook his head and smiled, raised his chin slightly, and said proudly, "What I want, I will naturally get it by myself. As for you..." He put one hand on Zhang Zhan's ear, lowered his head and slowly approached. "Zhang Zhan. Remember tonight, you slept, but the future actor." After one night, when Zhang Zhan woke up, Zhang Li next to him was still asleep. He was facing away from him like the last time, a distance from him. Old and new marks were added to his naked back, which looked quite dazzling. Zhang Zhan couldn't figure out how a person's skin could be so tender. He just kneaded a few times and bit his teeth slightly, and there was a faint bluish purple on it. If you didn't know, he thought it was him. Really squeamish. Zhang Zhan stretched out his hand to cover Zhang Li's body with the quilt on the side, raised the air conditioner slightly, then got up and went to the outer hall to wash. When he came back from washing, Zhang Li was still asleep. He changed from lying on his side to lying flat, and the quilt was lifted to the side by him, and the whole person was in a big font. Last night, the two of them realized that Zhang Li was too sleepy behind. In the end, Zhang Zhan took him to the bathroom to take a bath and cleaned up. After the washing, Zhang Zhan didn't get dressed for him because of trouble, so Zhang Li was completely naked at this time. Her straight and slender legs are wide open, and there are many traces of love on her body. Such an unconcealed posture caused Zhang Zhan, who came in to suffocate his breath, tighten his abdomen, and almost raised his gun in salute. "Little bastard!" Looking at the unsuspecting person on the bed, Zhang Zhan's forehead bounced with blue veins, strode over to cover him with the sheet again, picked up the phone on the side and walked out of the room again. Zhang Li slept very deep this time. He had hardly slept well in the past few days when he came to this world. No one disturbed him this time. The environment was very comfortable. He didn't wake up until noon. His body ached as if being crushed by a car. After Zhang Li woke up, he lay on the bed for a while before slowly getting up and sitting against the head of the bed. Seeing that he was awake, the system reported yesterday's strategy effect. "Congratulations to the host, after a night of hard work, the male protagonist's current favorability value is 20%. 20%, compared with the previous 20, this time the favorability has increased by 40%. It's not a negative value anymore." This good reflection made Zhang Li feel that his waist is not so painful, and he also has a joking thought, sure enough, there is nothing that can't be solved by one shot. If there is, then 2 shots. System. Faced with a host who suddenly opened a yellow cavity, the system routinely did not know how to respond. That's right. Zhang Li suddenly remembered something and asked with interest, "Little cute, it stands to reason that you and I are bound together, so when I went to bed with the male lead last night, did you watch the whole process?" NS. No, when you go to bed with the male lead, the system will be automatically blocked. Is that so? Zhang Li didn't quite believe it. Then how do you know that I worked hard all night? It's not a good kid to lie. The system was silent for a while, because I was blocked all night. Zhang Linao made up the appearance of his system being locked in a small black room all night. He was taken aback for a moment, then burst into laughter, and his tears almost came out. "I'm sorry, cute, next time I will let you out as soon as possible." "Thank you, host." "You're welcome." "Okay, the matter is settled, and I should go back." Zhang Li lifted the quilt and got out of the bed, took his own clothes from a chair on one side, and just bent over and put on a trouser leg. The door of the room was suddenly opened from the outside. As soon as he looked up, he saw Zhang Zhan walking in. The two looked at each other, and Zhang Li blurted out, "Why haven't you left?" "Zhang Zhan." This sentence is exactly the same as Zhang Zhan asking why Zhang Li hasn't left on the first night. Zhang Zhan, who had waited in the outer hall for a morning and planned to wait for him to wake up for lunch, wanted to hit someone. "Why haven't you left?" This sentence sounds to Zhang Zhan. He feels like the one who crawls on the bed. He has a feeling of being amorous and staying to be unpleasant. "You are disappointed that I didn't leave." As soon as Zhang Li spoke out, the system promptly reminded, "Host, please be aware that the male protagonist's current mood fluctuates greatly, please do emergency work." Emotional fluctuations? As soon as Zhang Lijing reminded him, he noticed the ambiguity in what he said just now, changed his face in a second, put on a worried expression, and added intimately, "I thought you had already gone to the company. I didn't expect you to be here. I didn't delay. You should work." When Zhang Zhan saw that he was only worried about delaying work, his face improved, his eyes swept over his legs where he was only wearing half of his trousers, and he thought that he used these legs to clamp his waist last night, forcing himself to look away again. When he went elsewhere, he coughed slightly, "Put your pants on, what kind of show do you play in broad daylight?" Zhang Li looked down at his trousers and silently lifted them up, thinking that it was you who came in without knocking on the door and you blamed me for sorrowing. The way you got up last night was so sloppy. Seeing him wearing his pants obediently, Zhang Zhan dropped a sentence of "wash his face and come out to eat" and went out. Zhang Li heaved a sigh of relief, picked up the t-shirt and put it on, and asked the system as he put it on, "Is the favorability level lowered?" "It hasn't fallen, please rest assured, the host." The system also has lingering fears. That's good. Zhang Li is really overshadowed by Zhang Zhan's fickle personality. Fortunately, he reacts fast enough, otherwise if he can rely on another shot to increase his favorability, his will bloom. Sure enough, life is like a play, it all depends on acting. After Zhang Li washed his face and went out, lunch was already arranged in the small dining room in the outer hall. Zhang Zhan sat on the seat, and a waitress in a shirt and black skirt was waiting beside him. Seeing him coming out, Zhang Zhan waved his hand to let the waiter out, only 2 of them were left in the living room. Zhang Li walked over and sat down opposite him, and found that today's lunch was a Cantonese-style refreshment, and the table was filled with more than 20 dim sums. "I worked hard all night last night, and today I slept again until noon." As soon as Zhang Li woke up, he was hungry. He greeted him and took his chopsticks to eat. The hotel's refreshments are very authentic, the shrimp dumplings have thin skin and fresh meat. After a bite, it feels like the shrimp bounces between the teeth. The taste is delicious. Zhang Li ate 3 in a row. The fresh and tender shrimp and the rich soup made him narrow his eyes with satisfaction, and he did not forget to lick the corners of his lips after eating. Zhang Zhan noticed his small expression, like a satisfied cat, and a slight smile flashed under his eyes. So delicious. It tastes good. Zhang Li nodded and pointed to the last shrimp dumpling left on the steamer. Would you like to try it? You eat it. Zhang Zhan saw that he likes to eat this, so he didn't fight with him, and reached out to replace the cage of shrimp in front of him. Zhang Li was not polite to him either. He ate the shrimp dumplings and picked up the shrimp he exchanged. The two of them ate and chatted, and the atmosphere was still harmonious. When talking about Zhang Li getting the roles of Lu Chuandeng and Lu Beizu, Zhang Zhan took a drink from the side and toasted to him, I haven't congratulated you on getting the role, congratulations. Zhang Li swallowed the steamed pork ribs in his mouth, raised his cup and touched him, thank you, and also thanks to you for giving me the opportunity to audition. Friendly reminder, the male protagonist's favorability has increased by 5%, and the current favorability is 25%. Hearing the system's reminder, Zhang Li said wow in his heart, as expected. He probably has a little bit of a way to attack the hero, and a 100% favor is just around the corner. Thinking of this, Zhang Li curled his lips and smiled. Zhang Zhan didn't expect that Zhang Li's angry mouth would be able to say thank you. It seemed that it was worth the time that he spent the morning waiting for him to have lunch with him. Seeing him suddenly smiling like a fishy kitten, Zhang Zhan asked curiously, what are you laughing at? It's fun to get the role. Zhang Li smiled, isn't this worthy of happiness? Oh! Zhang Zhan raised his eyebrows, you will be the actor in the future, a role of eunuch, so is it worth your excitement? You don't understand. Zhang Li shook his index finger. For a person who likes acting, it is a pleasure to get any role you like, especially the role you get by your own ability. When he said this, there was tenderness and determination in his eyes, as well as an inexplicable sense of heaviness, as if he had put so much effort into the career of acting and worked hard as a career of his life. Zhang Zhan and him looked at each other for a while, and then suddenly asked, why do you want to find the subdirector's unspoken rules with this ability? Zhang Li. When Zhang Zhan thought that Zhang Li almost got on someone's bed, he felt a breath of air in his throat. Thinking of his emotional appearance under him, he almost belonged to another person. The breath seemed to be in his throat exploded, and the originally clear mood seemed to be suddenly covered by smog. Seeing that he didn't say a word, he seemed to be tacitly acquiesced, and he was even more annoyed, why don't you speak? Have the courage to climb the bed and admit it. Zhang Li was a little uncomfortable being stared at by him. It's hard to say that he used to climb the bed for the talented person, right? Although it was not he who made the decision, but now the soul of this body has been changed, and he is determined by this pot. Hey, it's time to fight acting again. Faced with Zhang Zhan's sudden anger, Zhang Li slowly put the cup in his hand back on the table, his expression turned a little dim, and he said gravely, it's just that I was blind. With such a simple and rude answer, Zhang Zhan had no rebuttal for an instant. Zhang Li sighed and looked at Zhang Zhan faintly, if I met you first, where is the deputy director? Zhang Zhan. Do you blame me? However, fortunately, although there were some mistakes in the plan, the result was still very good. Zhang Zhan was uncomfortable with his hot and dedicated eyes. Seeing that he was quite introspective, he snorted softly, forget your interest. With a smile on his face, Zhang Li wanted to know what was interesting. I didn't want to live. After lunch, Zhang Zhan handed the 2 contracts sent by Ji Shu in the morning to Zhang Li, look at it. If you have any requests, you can raise them. If you have any problems, you can sign on them. Zhang Li took it over and took a look. One was an artist contract and the other was a maintenance contract. The artist contract was naturally signed in the studio under the name of Jiang's group. Zhang Li looked over it and found that the terms in it were very beneficial to him, a newcomer who currently has no reputation, and there are no problems in all aspects. Since we want to re-enter the path of the entertainment industry, signing a contract is necessary. Jiang's group is strong and resourceful. It is a very good choice for Zhang Li to sign a contract with Jiang's group. If you choose Jiang's group, it will be a good choice for Jiang's next strategy. Cham should also help, after all, near the water. So Zhang Li signed the contract without objection. As for another maintenance contract, he raised his head to look at Zhang Zhan, who was sitting on the side of his laptop, and asked aloud, "You want to support me?" Zhang Zhan focused on his computer screen and said without looking up, "It's so clear in black and white, can't you understand it?" Understood. Zhang Li has been in the entertainment industry for so many years in his previous life. Although he hasn't involved this kind of unspoken rule, he has heard of it. It was not too surprising that Zhang Zhan proposed to support himself. After these two in-depth exchanges, he could feel the other party's interest in him, but he didn't expect the action to be so fast. "What else can you ask for?" Zhang Zhan sent the email and closed the notebook. "You can mention the money and the house. You can also change the place you like if you are not satisfied with the house above." In addition to the large amount of pocket money paid to Zhang Li each month, the contract also includes a Baijianjia Yuan house and a car. The maintenance period is half a year. Zhang Zhan has the right to terminate the contract at any time. Zhang Li learned from his original memory that this Baijiang Garden is a mid to high-end community near the suburbs of Jiangdong Road. The housing price is very high. Although it is close to the suburbs, the traffic is very convenient. Whether it is a work contract or a private contract, Zhang Zhan is very generous to him. Zhang Li didn't have any comments, so he took the pen and continued to sign his name. When Zhang Zhan saw that he signed his name, he was very satisfied, and stood up from the sofa. "The company will arrange brokers and assistants for you in these 2 days. I have something to go to the company. Ji Shu will pick you up later. By the way, help you move to a new place." "Okay, Mr. Zhang, you go slowly." Zhang Li nodded, and had no objection to his arrangement. "Anyway, there is a room for a bastard." Zhang Zhan stood still, looking down at him. Seeing that he was not leaving yet, Zhang Li looked dazed. "Aren't you going to the company?" Zhang Zhan hated him for his slow reaction. He pointed his finger at the support contract on the table and lifted his chin. Zhang Li came back to his senses, stood up and kissed him on the cheek, and smiled, "I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with business for the first time on the job." Zhang Zhan gave a hum, put the notebook away, turned and left the room. When he reached the door, Zhang Zhan pointed his tongue to the place where Zhang Li had just kissed. Compared with last night, this shallow kiss seemed extremely innocent, but he felt some subtle throbbing in his heart inexplicably. It was as if the kitten in his heart put away his paws and swept his heart with his tail instead. "President Zhang!" The assistant waiting outside the door called him aloud. Zhang Zhan curled the corners of his lips, and handed the notebook in his hand to the other party. Zhang Li didn't wait long before Ji Shu came over, and the two returned to the rental house to move things. "I rented this house for a short time and didn't have a lot of luggage." Ji Shu called the moving company and moved everything over. The house in Baijianjiayuan has 4 bedrooms and 2 halls. It has a master bedroom, a second bedroom, a study room, and a fitness room. The space of the house is very large. The bedroom also has large floor-to-ceiling windows. It is heavy and gives people a very comfortable sense of belonging. After he became famous in his previous life, he became accustomed to living in a big house. In the past few days, he lived in a small single room of more than 10 square meters. Zhang Li was a little uncomfortable. He was very satisfied with the house Zhang Zhan gave. After Ji Shu left, Zhang Li took a bath, watched a movie, and relaxed. When night came, Zhang Zhan went to the Phoenix Coast after finishing his work, and Shen Yi called early and said that he would gather there. The Phoenix Coast is the largest and most luxurious entertainment club in the city. As the boss, Shen Yuji reserved the largest one in the VIP suite as a gathering place for their group. As soon as Zhang Zhan got there, Shen Yuji hooked his neck and apologized to him, saying that he had made a mistake as a brother, and even let the little beauty who had given him run away. In order to compensate, he specially found a better one today to compensate. Zhang Zhan took away his hand and showed no interest in the compensation. He said, "It's not necessary. Don't dislike it, just look at the people before speaking." Shen Yuji snapped his fingers, and the manager who was waiting on the side hurriedly went out and soon led the person in again. The person who came in looked less than 20 years old. He was wearing a clean white shirt and jeans. His broken hair dyed with flax made his skin look very white, and his beautiful face was timid, which was very pitiful. As soon as he came in, everyone in the box yelled loudly. Shen Yuji patted Zhang Zhan on the shoulder and smiled ambiguously, "How is it? New college student, are you satisfied?" Zhang Zhan glanced at the opponent casually, who happened to also look at him. Although his expression was timid, his eyes revealed his ambition. "The difference is too far." Zhang Zhan remembered writing on his waist yesterday, and proudly said that he was sleeping with Zhang Li, the future actor, and he took a sip, picked up the wine glass and touched Shen Yuji, drank it in one sip, and then dropped the sentence, "I'm going back." He left the box and turned a deaf ear to the shouts of Shen Yuji behind him. Zhang Zhan drove to Baijianjiayuan from the clubhouse. In the afternoon, Ji Shu had told him that Zhang Li had moved there. When passing a pharmacy on the road, Zhang Zhan remembered the traces Zhang Li had made on his body in the morning, pulled over and parked the car, went in and bought some ointments for invigorating blood and removing blood stasis. Baijianjiayuan was Zhang Zhan's house. He naturally had the keycard and password. He didn't knock on the door when he got there. He directly pressed the password to enter, and then saw Zhang Li sitting cross-legged on the sofa. Zhang Li heard the voice and looked up to see him. He was a little surprised and took it for granted. He put down the character material of Lu Chuandeng in his hand and asked, "Are you finished?" "Yet." Zhang Zhan approached him and saw that he had a pigtail on the top of his head. He felt a little cute, so he took a second look. Zhang Li noticed it and stretched out his hand to untie the small rubber band. "The hair is a bit long, blocking the eyes." When he spoke, he rubbed his shoulders that were aching for too long. He was wearing a big t-shirt bought in the night market. The clothes were big and the neckline was also big. Following his movements, the collar leaned to one side, revealing a little bit of purple. When Zhang Zhan saw it, he cursed in his heart that he didn't know the severity, and frowned, "Take off your clothes." "Hey!" Zhang Li paused. He raised his head and stared at his neck. He realized something, pulled the collar back, and said earnestly, "Mr. Zhang, although I was very comfortable last night, but I was indulged." "Body." Zhang Zhan looked at him with an expression of disapproval, as if he was a naive child, and had the urge to smash the bag with medicine in his hand on his face. The author has something to say. Is President Zhang angry today?